One of the best things about college football is that in any given season, anyone has the chance to absolutely dominate that season. And when I say that, I'm talking about college players who are viewed as average but decide to just put on random displays of talent in any given year. This is something that happens a lot more than we think, and although there's no way to bring attention to all of these random seasons, I do want to point out one before we get into the subject of today's video. In 2021, I'm willing to bet that you don't know who the leader in rushing yards and yards from scrimmage was. Well, it was this random dude from Central Michigan named Lew Nichols who had 1,841 rushing yards and 16 touchdowns, along with 338 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns to give him a total of 2,178 yards from scrimmage. So I just point that out to make it known that there are a lot of seasons like this from random players from random colleges. But the dude we're going to talk about today had one of the most dominant defensive seasons we've ever seen, yet had absolutely no business being in the NFL. In this video, we go over the crazy, dominant, and random season of Gerard Holloman. So let's get into it. So the first thing I'm going to point out is that when someone has an overwhelming amount of interceptions, it's hard to distinguish if it's due to the skill of the player or if it's due to the error of the quarterbacks he plays against. And when you have a crazy amount of interceptions like 14, I definitely think that it's a mix of both. But this is something we'll revisit later in the video and find out why, despite the number of interceptions Gerard pulled in, he was ultimately not a very high prospect in the draft. He attended Miami Southridge High School in Miami, Florida, and became a pretty high recruit during his time there. He actually had one game where he took an 80-yard kickoff to the house, had a 38-yard pick six, caught 6 passes for 78 yards, and rushed the ball 6 times for 118 yards and a touchdown. So clearly he just possessed a high level of athleticism that was a threat no matter what position he was playing. He was a 4-star recruit being ranked the 7th best safety in the country. So he had a lot of offers from really solid schools, but decided to commit to Louisville. His first year as a true freshman, he only played in 3 games due to a shoulder injury, but also redshirted that year. One quick thing that happened in between his first and second year was that they switched his listed position from DB to safety, which has me thinking if they made that move because they thought he would be better at safety or if they thought he just couldn't play corner. Anyway, his second year was not much better, looking as he only played in 8 games and had 16 total tackles and 3 pass deflections and 0 interceptions. And the only reason I point out the fact that he had no interceptions is that when you go from 0 interceptions one year to 14 the next, I don't care who you are, you can only attribute a certain amount of that to skill. Again, I already touched on this, but with every interception, there's a certain percentage that's attributed to the DB's skill and the quarterback's error. And as we'll see, Gerard is able to benefit from both of these in some way. With that being said, I am in no way trying to understate the incredible season that he had in 2014. By all means, he deserves the recognition and accolades he received, but there's a reason he was not a high prospect coming out of college and didn't work out in the NFL. But getting into that great 2014 season, Louisville had actually changed conferences for the second time in 2 seasons, going from the Big East to the American in 2013, and then the American to the ACC in 2014. So not only Gerard, but his whole team was playing against totally different competition from the year before, which has me thinking if that contributed in any way to the amount of interceptions he had. He played in 12 games that season, had 44 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a sack, and 14 interceptions. With that 14th interception, he tied an NCAA record for interceptions in a season. Louisville as a whole also had a pretty solid year as they finished 9-4 with the 24th ranking in the final AP poll. So during research for this video, I came upon a very articulate and well-written article that not only talks about Gerard Holloman, but goes over the position of safety as well, and specifically the expectations for a safety in the NFL. I strongly encourage you guys to read this article for yourselves, because for being written in 2015, I feel that this applies more than it ever has in today's NFL. Essentially what he says is that with the advancement of offensive schemes in the NFL, defenses don't really have the luxury of having players with one main skill. Looking at the safety position, strong safeties are supposed to make the majority of their impact in the run game or down low, while the free safety is there to cover space and make their impact in the pass game. But what this dude is saying is that the sheer advancement of offense in the game has forced defenses to find safeties that are able to contribute in every aspect on defense, opposed to someone who, say, can cover better than anyone in the league, but is horrible in run support. Now, the reason he points this out is because Gerard falls right into this category. Later in the article, the author points out that what made him great in that season was his aggression combined with his quick feet and recognition. It specifically highlights Louisville's game against Florida State that year, where Gerard picked off Jameis Winston twice and should have had a third. During that game, Gerard showed off his aggression and ability to recognize routes that drop into his zone. And when you look at the fact that this was his greatest and primary skill, it makes sense that he got a crazy amount of interceptions like 14, because that is the exact set of skills that lead to interceptions. But on the flip side of that coin, his ability in run support was nowhere to be found. Although his aggression helped him in the coverage game, it was something that held him back in run support. Not just aggression, but his aggression paired with his awful pursuit. There were many times throughout the season where his inability to locate the ball, pursue, and tackle the guy was fully on display. And I highlight those three parts for a reason. Because he would regularly fail to locate the running back quickly, he over-pursued the player, allowing a cutback for a big gain, or when he did get to the ball, his tackling technique was awful. He constantly attempted to tackle players above the waist, and since he was listed at 6 foot and just under 220 pounds, that is not a luxury that he had. So anyway, I say all of that to make this one point. This is how the article is concluded, and it summed it up too perfectly for me not to use it. But there were too many things that needed to change for Gerard for him to be a valuable NFL player. And this is the last time I'll touch on it, but it's hard to use purely interceptions as a way to prove your skill or ability, because so many other factors contribute to interceptions. Things like Gerard's defensive teammates doing their job well enough that the QB has to go to Gerard's guy, or the QB making a bad throw, or the receiver running the wrong route. So with that said, it's not exactly shocking that Gerard was not a high NFL prospect. He ended up being picked in the 7th round of the 2015 draft by the Steelers. They released him in September, and he would go on to join the Bucs practice squad, but didn't last very long there either, and he was released in April of 2016. So looking at Gerard's college career, and specifically his amazing 2014 season, I think it could be perceived as me trying to downplay or discredit his amazing year. But that's not at all what I'm trying to do. 14 interceptions in a season is the NCAA record for a reason, and anyone who even comes close to that, let alone ties it, possesses great skill. However, one of the main takeaways from this video is that no one remembers this season or talks about it, and that is also for a reason. Although 14 interceptions is without a doubt an impressive number of takeaways, the player responsible wasn't exactly a legend. But I'll end on a positive note, which is that Gerard cemented his name in college football history in that 2014 season, and regardless of the player he turned out to be, he'll always be able to say that at one time, he was the most dominant defensive back in the entire country. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this one. If y'all enjoyed, make sure to like and share the video, as that helps the channel to grow. Besides that, until next time.